Hello out there, I'm the Oldest Nerd, and it's time once again for Talking Movies with Professor O. And Professor O, how are you doing this morning? Let's see if we put you up here. Here we go. Hi.
I am doing great. It is not only an honor, it's an honor and a privilege to be here, sir.
Thank you very much. We're having fun with this, and it's no less of an honor to talk about a really good Disney movie this time. We just came out of the black hole, and I have to say that perhaps that film was aptly named, but we disagree a little bit on that. Uh,
I still love it in its own way.
yeah, but we were talking about last time. If it weren't for the black hole, Tron would not have been made, which is what we're talking about today.
That's exactly right. Yeah, from a financial point of view, I think Disney. It's interesting to look at Disney in this time period. They were still, even after the black hole, they're trying to do something new, something different. Star Wars has come along, and they're trying to break out of that Witch Mountain and Herbie mode. It seems like the only films they can make, and they're
Yeah.
trying to do something new to keep up with Star Wars and Star Trek. And so they do the black hole, which if it could be a swing and a miss, but sometimes when it's you look at it as a swing and a miss, and you go, wow, they really took a big swing, even though they might have missed. But then it's interesting to know 2 years later they're still largely in that. I need to. There's a really good book called Storming the Magic Kingdom, which talks about Michael Eisner coming along to work with Roy Disney. And I think that started right around this time period, 82, 83. So
It would make a
basically,
lot of sense. It would make a lot of sense because Michael Eisner was over at Paramount and
right,
one of the supervisors over the Star Trek movie, and
right.
and I think that because the black hole, at least its initial box office did not perform as well as they had hoped. I think
Right.
it cost them 28 million. They made 35, and you generally have to make twice as much in order for that to work, right?
Right. Right. It did not do. If it made the twice as much, it barely did it. So it was almost like Star Trek: The Motion Picture in a sense. So yes, we'll, after a lot of thought, we'll continue along with something, but they don't know what it's going to be, and they're still trying to reconstruct their identity. They're still trying to come up with this new identity, and these computer developers come along, and it's just a fascinating story. I the of the team of early computer developers, pretty much like Steve Jobs, Wozniak, Bill
Yes.
Gates. Only it's a little bit different team, and they had worked in doing commercials using early computer graphics, and in the process of doing these commercials, what was interesting was they were doing commercials, and then they made a pitch to the NBC, who was doing the 1980 Olympics.
Yes.
These early developers, and then the Olympics, they were doing cartoon Olympics, basically computer animation Olympics, to go along with the real Olympics that NBC was going to maybe use as some program breaks. Then the Olympics get canceled because of Afghanistan and Russia invading Afghanistan, and then they didn't have a job. So then, but they'd always thought while they were doing their computer graphics, wouldn't it be cool if we did something with these computer, these superhero like characters that they'd come up with on their own time, just for fun, this artwork, computer graphic type artwork. Wouldn't it be fun to do something with this? And they make the pitch to Disney.
Well, they went elsewhere first. I mean,
Ah,
Steve Linsberger. Was Steve his name?
right.
Yeah, Steve Linsberger, who was the writer and director of Tron,
Hmm.
was shopping this around Hollywood and really wasn't getting a lot of hits on it. I mean, the Paramount, of course, already had Star Trek. They didn't want to mess with this. The other studios were not interested, and Disney was interested. Although once they did sign the papers on it, I understand that nobody from the animation team wanted to have anything to do with this. They had to actually hire all outside people to produce this film despite the fact that it was Disney. I mean, if you take the Black Hole, where everything was done in house, this one just about everything was done by outside contractors. It's kind of
Oh,
interesting.
that's a great comparison. Yeah, right. There were a couple of Disney animators. A lot of them were not fascinated. They just did not even view this as necessarily an art form or something they could get their head around. The whole, even the process of doing it, they just weren't necessarily. They weren't necessarily impressed, or they just didn't viewed it as something so other that they couldn't necessarily get it in their heads. But a couple of the animators would start to come and stay late at night and watch the process.
Yeah.
And of course, filming the process did not necessarily look artistic either. It's not like, I mean, they're filming against a black background in that process, I believe.
Yeah, they had painted an entire studio black with black floor, and something you can see in the film where you see them standing in the circles, the concentric circles,
Right.
was actually painted on the studio floor.
Wow.
Yeah,
That was actually,
and that's the thing. Despite the fact that a lot of this film really wasn't computer generated at all, uh, the they couldn't get nominated for an Oscar on special effects because the Academy Board thought that using computer effects was cheating.
was cheating. That's, I
And
mean,
and
and you,
yeah, and up to now we've talked about computer graphics. They made that a big pitch in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. They said, look at the bridge, all these computer graphics. Actually, they were all cartooned. They weren't graphics at all. They weren't computer graphics at all. They were just film loops that were rear projected onto the screens on the bridge,
right. To look like, right. It's a,
and they were fully animated. And
the
in
only
this, yeah,
the one thing when you think of something that looks like a computer generated, I think we were talking about it. I think after the show last week, one of the first films to use CG I'm working on, and basically they would always use true computer generated graphics to look like a representation of a holograph or something like that. That was
yes,
it wasn't like an entire world at
yeah.
all. It was Star Trek for me, when you see the Genesis project, you see the informational video. This is the Genesis project, and this is what it can do. And Kirk's watching that. He shows that secret informational video to McCoy, and that to me was the classic use of CG just to show kind of a holographic image of a planet or something three
But
dimensional.
once again, that really wasn't much computer graphics at all. The line drawings were, and the rest of it was animated.
It was
And
animated.
and
Wow,
the only actual computer generated scene was in the opening where they have the compass and the course being set for the neutral zone. That was computer generated, and that was
that
about
was.
the capability of computer graphics at the time.
And again, it's showing some sort of like navigational aid as opposed
Yeah,
to a world and characters,
right.
truly true characters who are themselves that are CG rendered that live in a world. Apparently this yeah, Linsberger was the had developed, I think, a 7-Eleven no, a 7 Up ad that a 7 Up ad that had used that caught people's attention in the late 70s, and he pitched that to Disney along with the work he was doing for NBC. But and they still, Disney was scratching their heads, do we want to do this stuff or not?
Yeah, obviously there was a lot of interior politics that were against this, considering that Disney had probably the only existing animation department by that time. They'd already shut down Warner Brothers and the other MGM's animation teams.
Right, but it was true what we think of as old school cartoon animation, and
Yeah,
nothing like this. And as you said, the animators just didn't get their heads around what this was, what computer animation was. They just didn't get their heads around that. And then the other thing is how to integrate even. And you've got I think only four companies could do CG work at that time, see
yeah,
computer generated work at that time. They all had different looks. And the movie ends up using all four of these companies, but they all had different looks,
yeah.
different things that they did well. one thing, amazingly enough, along with and we still need to get to the process of the backlit, how the characters with the black
Yeah.
set and it's backlit, but that that story works the way the characters are shot, backlit. That works together with the CG stuff. How many minutes of CG? It's like 15, 20 minutes of pure CG stuff in this film, Byron.
Yeah, 20 or
Professor
25
B.
minutes out of the whole film. And much of that is once again the grid drawings and things like that, because the people, of course, were filmed in black and white, and they were wearing white clothing with black details on it,
Because
and
with
and they matted in this backlight process that you're talking about. Black, of course, goes transparent on film when it's in negative. And what they did was that they took this and they put it on a light board. What do we call that? What is that called? A light panel.
right,
And
right,
and
like
would
rotoscoped it.
and it didn't rotoscope it. It was just the black was transparent,
Oh, you're
and they
exactly right.
shined a
Literally,
blue light through it essentially
right.
for
That's
the
exactly.
good guys, and a red light through the black guys, the bad guys. They were going to do yellow for the bad guys and green for the good, but for some reason that didn't go well in tests. And there's still a little of that kind of left over. If you see the film, there's little remnants of where some things turned yellow when they shouldn't have. But
Right.
and part of the flicker that tended to make this all look very digital was due to the fact they had to mix all of their different special effects houses, and it caused a flicker, and so that just became part of the effect rather than anything intentional.
Right. So the actors
But
are like we were talking. They're acting in front of a backlit set. They're
well,
way
the
ahead of
set
their time.
itself is pretty much black. And
Right. And
so, and the computer graphics are basically the surfaces. I think they did the cycles because that was possible to do in video games at that time, where the light cycles and the big watchers, the big look like moving cranes,
right.
and those kind of things. Very simple designs, though. Anything that was more complex was either cartooned in or was done with live action with backlighting.
Right.
And all of the digital stuff, though, at that time they didn't have the technology for motion digital graphics. And what they had to do was to express this frame by frame and basically do it like an animated film, where they basically pointed a camera into the computer monitor and snap a picture of it and then print that and then get another one and snap that, because they were using computers that were kind of like our first computers, probably, the 600 megabyte hard drive in it, and that was all they had.
Right. Right. One computer was. They mentioned. I think Jeff Bridges was describing this was
Yeah.
like 7, 8 freezer units put together. Literally looks like the part of the film where they're going to the laser part, the laser and
Yeah, that was actually done at Lawrence Livermore.
right, right.
There were actual lasers there, although they didn't shoot him with one, thankfully.
And that was that effect was fantastic when his fingers disappear. I know I'm going sideways for a second, but his fingers disappear. That effect in and of itself was fantastic.
Yeah.
The way, instead of just dissolving like a transporter dissolved like in Star Trek or something, and you probably would have accepted that, but the way his body goes layer by layer by layer, his head, his neck, it's incredibly.
Yeah.
And that's at one point I'm thinking this is a Disney film. This is looking really scary at this point because his head's gone. I mean, it's a dismemberment of the body, and it is amazing, that effect.
Yeah.
They must have learned something from Black Hole in that they didn't put any cutesy elements in it.
The what elements in it? The
Cutesies, not any cartoon, not any funny robots. It was all pretty consistent, I thought.
Good point. That is a really good point. It has a consistent feel to it. But yeah, now one part of this, the where they were filming with Against the Black Set, I believe they had to enlarge the frames of the film too, to make
Yes.
them. It felt like almost like the old transparency that your teacher would have that we did that we
Yeah.
used the and so that they could manipulate the black being transparent, and then they could manipulate all these different layers.
Yeah. They shot it
Um,
in 60 millimeter, and I think it was like in uh, one of the they used VistaVision cameras on certain parts of it in order to the anamorphic. Well, I don't understand the
right.
technology on VistaVision, but they did that, which I think shot 70 millimeter, and so it was all, it
Right.
was certainly they were going for very high resolution stuff.
Well, and the amount of manipulation,
Yeah.
almost like old school frame painting. The amount of manipulation on each frame. At some point, the frame has got to be a little bit bigger to work with, but then and it's just the amount of manipulation they did on the frames. And I had forgotten about for the computer. They're taking a shot. They've got all these pure graphical representations. Where like the motorcycle race or when they're in that sailing the space sailing ship,
The
for
solar
lack of better,
sail. I love
with
that.
the,
I
yeah,
love that
the
effect.
solar sail with the transparent wings. um all of that has got to be what you're talking about, where it's one frame at a time. You photograph
Yes.
that frame, go to the next one. And in four different companies working on that, and it comes together. And some companies do different things better than others. Some of the computer companies handle just pure shapes better than others, and or they did it differently. Each one kind of had their own specialty, and they merge this together in the film. And so that as a viewer, you're not thinking, oh, well, that's the effects from this computer company meshed with another computer company. It just all works together pretty darn seamlessly. And it looks like no other film. I even it's kind of interesting to me that I guess it must have been so intensive, because there wasn't a Tron 2 until we get to 2011 or 2010, the sequel. I can't think of another film that this really looks like in its own computer world. You would think that would have started a whole genre, and it really didn't. I can't think of other
Nobody wanted
films
to
that
do that kind of work. I mean, uh, I saw a feature with the director and his son, who's now
wow.
also a director of some sort, and they were going over the fact that it took 6 months of prep before they even filmed a frame.
Right. Wow. Before they and I think there was also, it's funny how these things come along, that in all of Star Trek the motion picture and the black hole. And I believe this film they had promised theaters, 600 theaters, June release. So
Yeah,
you're talking about,
they'd
and they
moved
were
it up. They were originally intending December, but because of competing films that were coming up at that time, they wanted to bring it into the summer. So it actually got cut some time during their production time.
and they were extrapolating. They were kind of happy with the results, but they said, "Okay, this is what we've got. We've got like 3 minutes of film, and at the rate we're working on this film, like Scotty would say, you're going to have to cut out the safety factor when the Enterprise is coming down in the naked now or the
Yeah,
naked
yeah.
time." And they're talking about how much time Scotty has got to do what he needs to do to save the ship. Same case for this. I don't know
They were
how
doing
they.
like 3 weeks on and one day off,
Right,
because that
right.
was that was the maximum that you could work without having a day off by the union rules. And
Ah,
so they were working at least 18-hour days, probably longer than that they didn't report, and going almost 3 weeks without a break.
and yeah, it and this whole little team. It just reminds me, because I don't think I've ever, as we're looking at our research materials to get this ready, I will flat admit I had not heard of these people, and
Yeah,
they're just completely coming at me from a sideways thing, and I just have immense respect for all of them. I mean, these are not your
yeah.
ILM people. These are a different group of people that came in, and it's like they came in and then dispersed to their own different ways. Some of them, I think, stayed in the What about the director? As far as directing other things, I was trying to remember after Tron, and
You know,
I was so focused
I
on the
could check
effects,
that
and
real quick.
you got it
I believe that he had. This is probably the only thing he would be known for.
right,
It seemed like he had fairly minor things after that, but I'm
right.
hoping he made
Well,
good coin on this. Here we are.
it's funny. I kind of wonder if he was talking about that he loved pulling these people together. They had maybe 12
Okay,
people.
he's
Yeah,
known for the various Tron films and Animal Olympics.
that's right. That was what he was pitching to NBC.
Yeah.
And so really it's funny. He had this he's a little bit like Flynn. He comes into this whole world of special effects as kind of a visionary, loved what he's doing, just didn't care about the money, loved, but at some point he's making enough money making these commercials like the 7 Up commercial
Yeah.
and then the Animal Olympics. He's making enough, but it said at some point I've really got to feed all these people that are working with me. We've got to make money. And I think they all had to kind of disperse maybe back into the computer industry to a point because
I think so.
there weren't this did not become a new
It took a while
genre
before
of,
they were accepted. I'm certain of that. And
right.
and you know, I mean, when did we see our first real fully CG film? That would be Toy Story.
Right, Toy Story. You look at the effect of the Matrix, maybe just a little after Toy Story. Toy Story is like 95. The Matrix is
Yeah.
99. I'm thinking science fiction. There's an incredible Denzel Washington, Russell Crowe, a film that has got to use that is very much like this. Virtuosity is the name of the film.
Okay.
Strange little film from like 95 that to me, my mind's thinking of things that remind me of Tron. Virtuosity, absolutely. Toy Story, you're right. It's going in that direction. But there's a good 10 to 12 years of no movies like that. And in the meantime,
Yeah.
these people have got to eat. And so I think they dispersed.
I
Yeah, it
think
was
they
kind of
also realized. I think they also realized that you have to have the computer technology, and they
right.
just
And
didn't have it then. They
yeah,
were dealing with big mainframe computers that worked very slowly. They were used to crunching numbers, not to basically doing illustrations, and so this was like a single person doing an animated cartoon that's 2 hours long or an hour and a half, as this turned out to be. It was incredibly intense. But let's talk about the actors, shall we? The I had not read anywhere that there was any question of who they were going to get for this. I mean, Jeff Bridges, who was just brilliant in this. I mean, I can see
oh,
why they picked him for that. It was an amazing
the
performance.
metaphysical, yeah, right.
Yeah,
The groovy, flaky, metaphysical, computer loving. He's got all the stuff in his head. It's like magic to him. It's like a mixture of math and magic, and he can put it together. And he's perfect for the part.
he
Right.
also was pretty much a gamer before this came about too, so that kind of helps. And I could see parts of the dude in this from
Oh, 100%.
later on.
The dude with math and physics skills.
Yeah.
That's,
And
and apparently,
I almost wondered, why they wouldn't have done somebody like Kurt Russell for this. But
mm,
once again, Kurt Russell had previously for Disney done the computer wore tennis shoes, and perhaps he wouldn't be taken as seriously. But
right.
Jeff Bridges worked for this. Now, Bruce Boxleitner, who was later on in a number of TV shows, Scarecrow and Mrs. King, I remember, and of course Babylon 5,
Oh,
where I think was his greatest role. And
back to using computer
this,
graphics again.
yeah,
Back to
yeah,
using every early computer graphics actually
yeah,
with Babylon 5.
yeah. I think they were using that. Oh, what was that system? We used
The
to
dude
use
tech
that
video toaster. They're using
video
those
toaster.
video
I
toasters.
remember that
Yeah.
now. Yeah, they did for that, and they did for like Sequest DSV, didn't they? I think they used the video
Right.
toaster for that,
Exactly. They used
and
it.
all kind of stuff. David
Boxleitner
Warner,
said,
who always makes a good bad guy, and he plays three roles. He's uncredited for being the Master Control Program, but as Dillinger, the guy who stole the company basically away from Flynn. He plays evil in a very nicely understated way, and of course he's also what is it, Sark, who's
Right,
the main fighter for their side,
right.
and then Barnard Hughes, who always plays old doctors or something like that. We find, and in fact, one of his biggest TV roles was a show called Doc, where he plays kind of a country doctor.
Ah,
But in this, he plays the guy that started the company, and it works out well. He's kind of the guru later on is on online,
I
and
did
yeah,
I did hear they offered the role of Bernard, the Bernard Hughes had, they offered it to Peter O'Toole, and
really,
and Peter O'Toole just was not impressed. He dropped out. I think. Oh, that's right. He came on the set and realized what they were going to be doing, and saw they were. He thought he actually he liked the idea of all the computers, but when he came on the set, it looked nothing like the Forbin project. You know, the background, the
yeah.
mise en scène looked nothing. There's no computer. It was all black. And he said no when that and
I'm
apparently
not an actor. I'm a movie star.
right right I must have
A
a
line from my
set.
favorite year.
Oh wow, that's perfect. Exactly. Well, and Boxleitner was on a horse. They literally gave him the script. He's on a horse doing a western, and he looks at the
Yeah.
script. They really wanted him, and he said, "No, this is not like I do westerns." Because at that time, apparently, he was doing a lot of western miniseries, movie of the week type stuff. And so then he reads it again. They really wanted him. He read it again. I can't. Something pushed him over the top. I think he's. Oh, the idea to act with Jeff Bridges
Yeah.
and he saw the commitment. I think so many people saw the visionary kind of commitment of these early computer hackers. You know, all that stuff and kind of
Yes.
the spiritual and spiritual side of loving the computer and what it could do. And I think that kind of put Boxleitner over the top.
I think you're right there. And of note, it's in a small part. Peter Jurassic plays Crom, and you wouldn't recognize him because, of course, most of his head is covered with the helmet and in black and white. And this was years before Babylon 5 came out. But you don't see Londo Mollari in his character at all. He's got kind of
No,
a northeastern accent, and
he's he's the popcorn guy. So in
yeah,
this, so when he's gonna in real world, apparently he is the popcorn, and I would have to watch it again
yeah.
just for that. That's one little thing, little detail like that. Did you catch the Pac-Man, the Pac-Man in the graphics?
I had heard that it was there, but I didn't see it.
I looked up at the right time. It's not there for long, but
Yeah.
it's there. It's in the scene where Dillinger, what's his yeah, Sarg is trying to get Tron and Flynn. They're trying to capture them about the around the time of the tanks
Yeah.
when they're loose when
Okay.
they after the cycles and they're
I have to go
loose
back and look at that.
and you can see one of the boards beside him literally has it's like a map where you're trying to find the bad guys and there's the Pac-Man. Whoop, 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 whoop. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I think that they did pretty well for what games could do at that time. I think that the this is what this is late '80s, and I remember when I was a student. And by that time, I was not a student, but the last thing that we had in the recreation center where we went to school was pinball machines, and
Oh
there
yeah,
might
right.
have been a Pong machine, and later in grad school I saw a Pac-Man machine or Mrs. Pac-Man or something, and they were very basic. You have a solid two-dimensional character and a grid and some dots, and that was pretty much it.
And that was pretty much it. And apparently, I actually looking at this coming out in like '82, I really did not know that Pac-Man. That really had to be like early developmental Pac-Man because I lost track. I didn't realize Pac-Man was around at that time, and apparently. The director filled this black set. You're right; it's
Yeah.
all black. Filled it up with video games, with which would have been the old arcade video games, so that the actors could play in between takes
Oh, setting up shots. Yeah.
while they're doing new setups and get into the whole spirit of being in a video game, being actually inside a computer.
They said the
Uh,
problem with that was that it was difficult to get Jeff Bridges away from the game and onto film.
That's exactly what talk about. Can you imagine how much fun that would have been?
Yeah.
That's and on the other hand, the acting of the film, I could tell that it's the first time. Now, what they're doing is again yet another way this film was so groundbreaking. What they were doing with that black set is exactly what everything being shot now, all the Disney shows where the background looks so great, and you're thinking, "Oh,
Yeah.
it's Mon Mothra, and that's her planet," and but no, it's all green screen, and it's all and the actors are basically acting against a complete green screen, and everything's
Well,
been brought in.
Lucas did it that way, where, if you needed a room, he just built the door and green screen the rest of it. And in fact, a lot of the stuff that they've done for television has more practical sets in it. Now, of course, they use that what do you call they call it different things. Paramount calls it one thing and Disney calls it another, which you're basically surrounded by screens. So instead of a blue screen, they actually see what the background looks like and can act against it.
That's
And
a new thing, right?
that's been used in a lot of the television programs now.
Where now
But
the actors can see what it would look right.
yeah, but then of course they couldn't. I mean, William Shatner once said he took a piece of paper and drew an X on it, and he said, "Now, in doing science fiction television or movies, this is how you do the special effects. They draw an X on a piece of paper and they hold it up and they say, okay, this is the alien. We don't know what it's going to look like, but you're real scared of it." And
It's
that's
spot on.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
for some reason, that's one thing that kind of took me to one thing I don't think we've mentioned is that in Black Hole, which there probably had its fair, like for last week, it had its a lot of matte work and where the actors would not have necessarily seen what's going to be matted in,
Yeah.
but of course the robots they could see. One thing we were looking at about that connection, I don't think we brought it up, is in the early tests for this film, the to show Disney that this could be done, Disney said, "Okay, do a test. Where this company is interesting that you've got. They've done the commercials, they've done the Olympic stuff. You want to do a movie? Let's do a test." So they do a test with and they actually for the first test they had a white background, and it still worked. The white background in the test actually worked. In the white background for this, they got a frisbee champion because they knew they were going to be using these frisbee-like
Yeah.
digital objects,
Well,
and the frisbee champion knocks down an old robot from the black hole. They were looking for something, so they brought back a couple of old robots, and you can see it. It's not. Thank goodness, it's not Bob. It's you know what I see.
he was
It's one
battered
of
up enough.
the standard guard robots that
Yeah.
and so so just like we were talking about earlier, they brought back some of the like, and I think you mentioned this on break, is Stanley Kubrick did not want them to bring back anything, reuse any old sets, no, and got rid of everything for 2001.
It created a lot of problems from doing the sequel 2010. They had to actually take frames of the film and figure out how they did it and reverse engineer it all. And
Yeah,
did a pretty
because
good job with it, surprisingly.
that's it. And you said he even destroyed some of the film, some of the
Yeah, he destroyed all the stock footage, all of the plans, and all of the models so that
bad.
they couldn't be picked up and used in some other film. And so when they needed to make the sequel, they had to actually go to the finished film and just look at it frame by frame to see how the models must have been built and all of that. They had nothing to go on.
Yeah, nothing to go. Well, thank goodness Disney didn't do that. There were still a couple
Yeah.
of old robots laying around for their test. They mentioned in the white with the white background, the problem was that it required a ton of light to do the black
Yes.
background, but with the white background, which they rejected, and they were thinking about doing painting. Oh, instead of like the black is transparent, but the white they were going to paint on top of it, and they said the amount of light required was ridiculous. So
Yeah.
in that test, they at least Disney they convinced Disney this could work, but they also learned themselves we got to go with a black background. One other thing you mentioned, the flicker too. Apparently, Kodak, for part of the process for filming this with the Kodalith film stock, they sent there's differences in film stock. Kodak, well, they want to make everything as universal as possible, but there
Yeah.
are still some subtle differences. And so to mask the differences, like kind of the same way of masking using those four computer companies, but to mask the differences, um, Kodak was saying you need to shoot this film in order in the film stock. Use the film stock in the order we sent it. So they sent boxes and boxes and boxes
Yeah.
of film stock. The boxes had numbers on them. They weren't paying attention to the numbers that the boxes were on. So they were just saying, it's film. And then, but then they'd see these little flickers. And that was because they were shooting the film not in order. Even though it's
Yeah.
raw, unexposed film stock, it's still got some differences. So they realized we got a flicker, and it was like that other effect you were talking about, Professor B. Is they just covered it up. They said, this whole world we live in, inside the computer itself, is going to have flickering lights, and they just went with it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and it doesn't bother me at all.
No, I thought that was kind of a clever way to do it, and then realized it was an accident. But that happens. The other thing is you're talking about the frisbee-like things. They were actually frisbees. They were the master tournament frisbees you used to be able to buy in the stores.
Really?
Yeah, they were white, and they had a concentric circle pattern in the plastic. And they were the heavier ones rather than the cheapy $2 frisbees you should be able to
That
get.
we would play with. Yeah.
But they were good frisbees, but they were actually just frisbees that were painted.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I'm just thinking, and I'm thinking of their frame by frame work that they did. It's one thing to have light color and light changes on the characters, and then in the background, but then the frisbee itself is going to have its gradients. The way it flickers and stuff. It's that's amazing. That is
Yeah,
amazing.
it really is. And in the little documentary that I saw with oh goodness, I'm losing names. Steven Linsberger and his son Carl.
Right.
Carl says in this that his dad showed him how to throw a backhand frisbee with one of those props.
Whoa.
And Steve Linsberger says, well, actually the stunt coordinator taught me how to do that.
That is amazing. I never learned how to do that
Yeah.
with the backhand. Yeah, I always wanted to, but that's that is amazing. That's the one thing. It's funny too. We're talking about the one of the computer companies talking about different films we've done. We did Star Trek: The Motion Picture a couple of weeks ago.
We did.
I was looking at a documentary on this, and they just happened to mention Abel and Associates. Well, that's kind of an infamous name from Star Trek: The Motion Picture. That was
Yes.
the first group before ILM that spent a ton of money and basically
Had nothing that
no
worked.
results.
Yeah.
Right, nothing worked. And Robert Wise, who's an incredibly for Star Trek: The Motion Picture, Robert Wise, legendary director, ton of patience, kind man. It's legendary also how mad he got at Abel and Associates. Well, apparently they found their footing. Maybe their true calling was computer graphics because they were one of the four companies, and Lensberger had no problem with working with them. Apparently,
Yeah. Well, I think that we probably should cut them a break anyway, because in films like Star Trek: The Motion Picture, they said, we want you to do something that's never been done before, and we want you to do it fast. And that's a big order for just about anybody.
That's true, and it's not the effects companies that the overarching studio makes these dates, these release dates that are just not realistic. They're trying to do the most cutting edge special effects ever, and all three of these films, The Black Hole, Star Trek: The Motion Picture, famously, and Tron, come up with release dates that are working against the poor effects houses that are trying to deliver the special effects. And it's amazing that how that in all three of those movies they made that same mistake. Um, The
Yeah.
what was I was oh the we talked about Able and Associates. One thing, what did you think of the story? I know we've talked about characters and effects.
I was going to say that we should probably get to the story because I think that is, with all of this said, all of the effort that they put into the special effects and how long it took them to do it and how they were able to improvise and the casting, which was just near perfect, that the story also was very good, very un-Disney like. But then again, this was all done outside. This was not your usual staff of Disney writers who've been there for 40 years and want to do the Shaggy DA, and which is an actual
The
film
Shaggy
I think
Black
they
Hole.
did. Yeah, yeah,
And I think that's such a prescient comment you made about how the black hole, they were just refusing to go out of the house. They looked at
yeah.
it a little bit, but they didn't want to pay what ILM wanted, not even close to that. And so, well, we'll just go in house. And this entire film is made out of house,
Yeah.
and so yeah, the story, very, you're right, not there's no cute robots. This is interesting to see Disney film with nothing really cute like that at all.
Yeah.
And it's such an interesting story in that it reflects to me that, and I'm sure yeah, and hearing some of these documentaries on it, you get this idea, this hacker, a hacker in a good way, but a hacker visionary like Jeff Bridges.
Yes.
You get that kind of mystical, and I think they all felt that computers could help democratize the world. They felt like there was a mysticalness, and if we could just liberate the computer from all bad, liberate it
Yeah.
from big money, liberate it from people that want to misuse it, that it will be wonderful for all if we could just liberate the computer. And it
Well,
kind
what
of
was
comes
it?
into the
What was
plot of
it
the
that Bernard Hughes said in that if you he was speaking against artificial intelligence and amazing for the time that it was. This is a discussion that we're having now as to whether
yes,
AI is a good thing or not. And I don't think they even had the term at that point. But
no,
he in the course of the movie is talking about that when the machines become smarter than we all become just dumber.
will men cease to think?
Yeah.
Will people stop thinking, essentially? And it was beautiful because, and you're so right. The he had taught the computer to play chess with him, and the computer had developed its own intelligence, as kind of almost like a sentience. And then we can see early on in the film, this computer is a completely dangerous AI. It wants to procure languages so it can basically take over military systems, military and defense system. It wanted to learn Chinese so it could run different, I think, military applications. Basically, it was like the Forbin project.
Yeah.
The computer was wanting to take over, and then he delivers that line, and it is a terrific line. And so right, it's a and on the other side of that is Flynn, and that spirit of Flynn delivering the computer all the good things the computer could bring for everybody. And then just the running of the computer, you go into that world, and it's 1982. I would not have known the term IO uh, in
They
1982.
did throw out a lot of computer terms that would have not been common at the time, and some people wouldn't know much about now. And they made up a thing that became kind of a catchphrase: derez.
Right, gonna derez you. In 1982, I am. Would I have even known this? Ram is the name of the character.
Yeah,
Um, Derez, IO. I love the one that we don't talk about too much. End of line, but obviously there
yeah.
was.
I don't think I took computer programming in college, and I don't recall an end of line. I
No,
think they like to do that in the movie TV movie Probe, and later in the series Search with Hugh O'Brien and Burgess Meredith. They had in the end of any of their computer feeds would say end run.
I have not, I've heard of those shows, and I have not. Those shows sound great. I'd forgotten Burgess Meredith was in a science fiction show with
Yeah,
that,
yeah. Hugh O'Brien and
right.
a couple of other Tony Franciosa and somebody else, and they
Right.
rotated the lead, and they were agents that wore little cameras around their neck and had an ear jack where all of the expertise of probe control could tell them, what language is being spoken here and translate for them and give them information, and they were able to take biomeasurements and things like this. And it was all very high-tech seeming, and the whole idea that you could get a camera on something that would fit on your ring was ridiculous at that time, which of course is, I think I have one here that's about that size.
And yet, again, so ahead of its time. And getting back to like even the IO, and those IO towers, if I remember, those were protected because the programs realized that this is where we interface with a user in the movie Tron. Users are, of course,
Yeah,
us, and it was so interesting that
the
the
gods.
in the gods, which is fascinating,
Yeah,
and to think that we would be accorded, people would be accorded that much respect. Of course, the programs who you created us, you users created us, so we much respect you.
you
But I
must have a
also I
major plan. Everything
I
you
said
do
again,
is
Byron,
everything you
the
do is by some grand plan. That was what Tron said to Flynn.
exactly. And I loved Flynn's response. No, not really. We just pretty much, we're pretty much like you. We do things one thing at a time, and hopefully something will work out.
Yeah,
Uh, oh, so well done. Yeah, that was just, and then around one other thing too, it just hit me too, is the computer graphics when some of the most amazing, when I was just thinking of that conversation because it's shortly after or around that conversation is when Flynn reconstructs those those structures that look like a kind of a
yeah.
yeah.
I know what you're talking about. They look like the things you use to move cargo crates, but
It's
I
true.
think they call them the Watchers or the Enforcers or something like that.
The Watchers, that he reconstructs the Watcher and flies around with that, and then when he's trying to land it and he basically can't land it, but it lands by it just uh um deconstructing it as one layer at a time. The first
It
layer,
reminded me of a Roadrunner cartoon where where the coyote is flying something and it loses one piece at a time before he finally hits the side of the rock.
that was it deconstruct that. There's a better word than that, but anyway, one piece at a time, and
Yeah,
then he's left in the top part, and you're right, Roadrunner. That's exactly right. And but that had to be their where it's sheer computer graphics, but like you mentioned, one frame at a time photographing
yeah,
that, phenomenal,
yeah.
phenomenal.
It's just amazing.
um
It's amazing how they
yeah.
did it.
Oh, and then the Bernard Hughes becomes his character is a fascinating character. I love the animation of him with that huge head. He's the almost like he's the guardian of the temple, pretty much. His it seems
Yeah,
like
they actually even called him the Guru.
right, right. The guru who is guarding the interface for the MCP. I forget. No,
No, he's not
anyway,
working with the MCP.
he's
He's
not
kind
working
of
with the MCP at
he's
all.
opposed to it. I
He may
think
be,
that, yeah,
but he's carefully guarding an interface. He's
he's an
protecting.
old program that they are ignoring pretty much,
Oh, just like
and
yeah,
so, but his wisdom because he was the first program.
right, right. And if you look at this film in a little bit like the hero's journey, then
Yeah.
then he becomes the wise old man mentor, the Obi-Wan of the.
Yes.
Oh, and you're right, not working
Or
for the
Yoda.
MCP at all. He's helping the programs, trying to be that true interface with the users.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and
Leader of the revolution. That's something else I read somewhere that the idea that inside your computer are a bunch of little people running around is kind of what people think of what's inside a computer. I have a different theory about that. I believe that computers are not electronic at all, but are filled with evil spirits. And hear me out on this, because what happens with evil spirits? First, they draw you in with something that looks very nice, and once you get completely hung up in it, then they turn on you. And that's exactly how computers
That's
work,
kind of
right?
like the hero's journey too. They pull you in, crossing the threshold into the departure stage, which is never pleasant. It's belly of the whale with those evil spirits. I
But
agree with you.
yeah, I think they do very well though in this personification of the inside of a computer. This is nothing like it, of course. It's all very virtual, but the idea that the programs are self-actualizing as they are here, and that the users are things that some of them don't even believe in.
Good point. Right, the use right. That's a good point. And yeah, were you saying that oh that yeah, in other words, some of the programs don't believe in the users, or
Yes.
the user. Okay, right. Some of the programs did not believe in the users,
And in
and
fact,
yet the
that was
good
being
one.
pushed by the master control program, saying there are no such thing as users, it's just me.
True, true. That's a good point.
which is
And yet the
which is
good program.
an authoritarian thing. You know,
Absolutely.
that's the whole Soviet government kind of thing, Stalinism, where there's no God, there's me.
Right. And then you could completely see that with the MCP.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yet the spirit, you're right, getting back to that spirit of that old hacker spirit of freedom. No, that believing in the individual program who's connected in an almost spiritual way. The good ones are they
Yes.
maintain that connection with the user, and of course and when we value a program, I wouldn't, again, 1982. I'm barely going to know the word program. I
Yeah.
might have heard a friend of mine maybe use the
I
word
had a
sports.
friend that had an Apple II. That was in
Right.
1982, and I never. I think I saw it once. We were
Once.
still typing on typewriters, and the whole idea. And there was a Lexus system where I was in grad school, and that was a rather odd thing. It was in the library, and it was a terminal,
Sure.
and to use it you had to pay for it, and it was very expensive. We used to say, put in a Krugerrand for the first 3 minutes.
Right, right. And this was back in the day when, from my experience, was a friend of mine, good friend of mine working. He was a computer science major, but he had the most amazing thing. His phone at his home. He had a terminal at his home in
Yeah.
1981, and his phone, puts the phone in the computer interface literally, and then he could hook up with the mainframe at SFA, and he was working on a D&D graphics, just a text-based D&D game, and I was amazed. Apparently, in the making of this, for some of the data transmission, even in this film, they did use that mainframe to phone connection, with a mainframe in New York
Yeah.
City. I mean, it's they to make this film, it feels like they were maybe 25% of the entire computing ability of the country was used in this film. I mean, it's amazing the
Yeah.
shuttle could stay could stay online because they were using a lot of computing power in this film.
I was told in the space program and for the Apollo moon landing, Apollo 11, they were using NASA's computers plus Texas A&M, which had the biggest mainframe at that time. And those two combined mainframes were about the computing power of our phones.
Exactly. That's exactly. I think I heard. Yeah, when
Went to the
I
moon on our
heard.
phones.
Yeah, no, our phones, because our phones
Yeah.
now have that. Yeah, 10 years ago it would have maybe, or 15, it would have been a desktop, and you still would have been blown away. Wow, my desktop had the. But no, your phone now has that much computing power, and
Yeah.
it's unbelievable. But yeah, the idea that it just and it's a good story. This story tells it. It
Yes.
is you have a lot of another thing that's kind of interesting too was in the hero's journey, which of course Flynn would be our hero crossing the threshold, uh,
Yes.
but with the departure stage and then the initiation stage. Initiation is pretty literal in this one because initiation implies some sort of game or some sort of task you've got to do, and they are clearly tasked in as soon as they get into the virtual environment. You've got to compete in these games so that eventually the MCP wants to watch you die, wants to watch Flynn die in the initiation like
Yeah.
games. and then but there's always the shadow side. And what's interesting is Flynn's shadow is Sarg. It is David Warner. That is his
Yeah.
shadow. Flynn's the good side of that computer, the democratizing side, but the opportunistic side that's going to take this use these computing all this knowledge and use it for profit. That of course is the David Warner character. But
Yeah, and
two sides
they
of the same
mention
coin.
that too, in that when Flynn is basically outlining the David Warner character, he's not really all that bright, but he's an opportunist, and so that kind of did that. The only thing about this movie that I'm not crazy about was the very ending. Okay, so he makes his way out of the computer and it digitizes him back to human. Okay, I'll take that. But then in the next scene, he's wearing a suit and is the CEO. How exactly did that happen so quickly? I mean, couldn't they just hire him back first? I mean,
Right.
put Bernard Hughes back as the CEO, and he could be their head programmer and get an award at the end. But instead, he comes helicoptering in, and he's the new boss.
He's the
We've missed a step here somewhere.
some. I think one something I read mentioned that we've got to assume Bernard Hughes is still back at the corporation, but doing exactly what he wants in a maybe he's
Mm,
working on that new part of the laser because he probably moved on to something else. But right, it does end too fast. It's not
yeah,
enough of a wraparound. And for me, and my shout out to my cousin Don, who would always be helping. He's a great fan of The Oldest Node, by the way, and
oh, wonderfully,
he would be helping me along with the different plot holes. It feels like they're not necessarily plot holes, but there are parts we go and I can't imagine. I did not watch this in 1982, but in 1982, I would have been thinking, okay, that character's name is Ram. Does that mean something? What's an
yeah,
IO? And and then layer that on to the fact that the plot moves fairly quickly. There's just like you mentioned the end where we could have used a little bit more exposition or a little bit
yeah,
taking more time. There's different areas in the plot. You realize people are doubled, like the idea of Crom and the popcorn guy. You do realize there's a doubling going on, but some of that can be a little confusing. And the film it I love films that know you are thinking, that want you to think, but I definitely would have needed Don nudging me a little bit on this one.
yeah. Well, I think that concludes our talk about this film, Tron. So, if you have any ideas of movies you'd like us to talk about, we're wide open. I have a couple of other ideas still to come, but we are open to those, and we will talk about that in coming weeks. This is an every Thursday thing for us, talking movies with Professor O. Thank you, Professor O.
My pleasure.
Okay, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, Dr. Farr.